Welcome back to the Daily Drum on WHUR and Sirius XM Channel 141. This is the Insight segment. I'm Harold Fisher. Tonight, we sit down with the new interim superintendent for the Prince George's County Public School System. With a one-year contract and a bold 100-day plan, Dr. Shawn Joseph says he's ready to hit the ground running, vowing to put relationships with parents, teachers, and community groups front and center. He's also promising to listen and lead with integrity, as well as push for excellence in every classroom. So what is the plan? We must say that today marks only the second day on the job for Dr. Joseph. He joins us now to talk about this. Dr. Joseph, thank you so much for agreeing to sit down and talk with us.
Harold, it's great to be here, and thank you for all that you do.
Thank you so much. Let me start with just where we are right now. You've only been on the job for 2 days, but the reality is that you are intimately familiar with the Prince George's County school system. You have been working at Howard University, and so you are coming from a rather porous environment. I would venture to say that you had an eye on all school systems in this area, just as part of your vocation. And so with that said, when you're looking at where you are right now, how would you assess the Prince George's County school system right now?
Right now, I think our system is poised to move forward, primarily because I think we're more unified as a county than we have been ever before, with County Executive Aisha Braveboy, County Council President Ed Burrows, Board President Brandon Jackson, and the full board and myself. I think there's alignment that we've got to row in the same direction. And there has to be clarity about purpose. I think there has to be clarity about how we do things. And this is a moment for partnership, that now we've got to call the village together and help the village understand the plan, so everybody can see where they fit into that plan, and we can be rowing in the same direction. I think in a lot of urban districts around the country, what we find is that we've got very political places with people pulling on the system in different directions. And when you pull in different directions, you get inertia, right? Because everybody's pulling and the thing doesn't move. The key is to get everybody pulling at the same time in the same way. And then you can start kind of loosening that flywheel that has been very difficult to move. And I think this moment in time in Prince George's County's history is a time where we're bracing ourselves to pull in the same direction, and that's exciting.
How do you know that will work? Historically, not just in Prince George's, but in any kind of governmental operation, you have factions that want different things, although the goal may be the same for success. But teachers may want different things, parents may want different things, students want different things, administrators, everyone has something that they want. So how can you get them to pull together?
You have to spend time with one another. I think you need to create structures where there's natural conversation, there's natural priority. You've got to be clear about, these are the resources that I have. And we have to have the courage and take the leadership and provide the clarity to say, this is what we're going to do first, second, and third. And these are the resources aligned to it. This is the capacity that's needed to make that happen. This is how we're going to monitor it. And this is what we expect the outcome to be if we were successful right up front. So often people just get caught running and doing stuff without measuring it, without being clear, without focus. I think we have to focus on focus. And I think everybody is clear that this is what we must do right now. Just yesterday, we were able to, come up with a tentative agreement for our teachers union. And that was a big step moving forward. So now we have a tentative agreement. It has to be ratified by all teachers. But we're optimistic. We were able to come in and in just a few short days, listen deeply to the teachers, find common ground, and move forward and with a common interest and goal. And I think if we take that approach with everyone on other initiatives, we'll be successful. I had my first cabinet meeting today, and one of the things I was clear about was I don't know, and one of the questions that I have is, are the right people within the organization from the top down meeting together, and are we clear about the problems we're trying to collectively solve? And do we have the right people at the table to solve these problems? What structures do we have in place? What you find in a lot of big organizations like Prince George's County, which has over 20,000 employees, is that you might have a bunch of people at the top, pontificating and talking to one another, but the people actually doing the work are doing their work in silos. And so, you're talking about problems at the top, but problems are not getting solved at the bottom. And therein lies a big problem. And so, I've spent, my career in large districts. I was in Montgomery County Public Schools in Maryland for 16 years before going to Seaford, Delaware, which was a small district, but then coming to Prince George's County for 2, going to Nashville Public Schools, which had 189 schools and 90,000 students. So I think, you live, you learn, and hopefully you get wisdom, and you apply that wisdom for such a time as this.
As you know, change is difficult for organizations, particularly where you have people who are entrenched in past practices. How will you institute change, and how will you address resistance to change?
Yeah, I think people need to understand the why change is necessary. So for me, I always start, I don't try to change anything until I feel like I've clearly communicated through data why a change is needed. And if we can agree, before I start pushing on something, I ask the question, can we agree that this is not the state we want to be in? If we agree, then to move forward, we got to do something different, because doing the same thing is going to get us the same result. So if we can agree that change is needed because the data tells us we're not where we want to be, then you have to have, I think you got to take time to talk through, put plans in place on the why, on the how, excuse me. How are we going to do it before you move? I think in my earlier years, there have been times where I've moved faster than the culture. I see something and I run, but visionaries tend to perish. You know what I'm saying? Like a prophets perish pretty quickly, because they might be right. You see something, you running on it, but if you don't have the buy-in, don't have the support, you just get killed off because you were far ahead of your time. And so I've learned that sometimes you got to go slow to go fast. You have to build political capital. You have to ensure people understand, okay, we know why this change needs to happen. Yeah, we're not happy with this. You have to get the people closest to the work actually involved in the change. So it's not, it don't matter how many PhDs and degrees you have. If you're not touching that problem every day, you shouldn't be the one just offering the solution. You should be asking people, what do you think? And maybe, your PhD can inform you on the research out there when they tell you this is what I think. And you can say that's interesting. Research might say something different. So why don't we test? Why don't we test what research says, test what you say, and let's see what moves. And then if we see something moving, then the question becomes, okay, we see this seems to be working. Now, how do we scale it?
Let me ask you, and you've said over the past couple of weeks that Prince George's County schools have this great potential. So if that is the case, if you've seen the great potential, but it has not achieved that great potential, what do you believe is missing?
We got to get the politics out of the work. I think that's one. I think we've got to help people focus. I think sometimes people are doing too much with too little capacity. Anybody who has greater vision than capacity will fail. And I think we have to be clear about what we're going to do first, second, and third, and how do we build over time. We've got limited resources. I mean, you look at Prince George's County and you look at Montgomery County, for example, night and day in terms of funding, and our size isn't dramatically different. It's probably about a 30,000 student difference, but the funding is dramatically different. And so, we with limited resource, we've got to be clear about what we want to focus on and what we expect to move and move it. I also think we have lots of families, for personal reasons, whatever reasons, who choose not to come to Prince George's County Public Schools. And I think we've got to look at that and understand why that's the case. And I think we must show the return on investment that you can get investing in Prince George's County schools versus other things. I would say, in the past decade or so, I've been thinking a lot about, the economics of education. And I've been thinking a lot about the wealth gap that exists between Black people, people of color, and non-people of color. And, for Prince George's County to be one of the wealthiest, Black communities in America, for us, for those middle class families who got the good government job and so forth, so they have some income, but they're not wealthy, they're not necessarily rich on average, but they're doing well. Hopefully, I got to help them understand you can't give that good government job to your kid, and if you got $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 that you can put in a public school, think of what power you'd have for your children if you took that money, that resource, and put it in a mutual fund or the stock market for them over the course of 12 years.
Dr. Joseph, hold your point, please, and don't forget what you were saying, because I do have to take a really quick break. We want to remind our listeners that you can hear this in every edition of the Daily Drum Insight segment via podcast on WHUR.com. The Original Quiet Storm with Raheem Devon is next on WHUR. We continue on Sirius XM channel 141 in just a few seconds. Welcome back to the Daily Drum on Sirius XM channel 141. I'm Harold Fisher. We continue our conversation with Dr. Shawn Joseph. He is the new interim superintendent for the Prince George's County Public School System. Dr. Joseph, you were talking about some of the things that may be missing regarding Prince George's County schools, and that may be an impediment to success or greatness. Please continue your point.
Yeah, and I was talking about, families understanding the value of what you get in Prince George's County. And I was talking about the, wealth gap that exists between people of color and non-people of color. And I was saying, what if those parents that were putting $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year into private schools took that money and put it in a mutual fund for their children and had their children in our system? they could actually create wealth. I mean, that's a significant amount of money that's just gone for an education that may not be dramatically better than what they would get in Prince George's County public schools. So I want families to understand the economic benefit of reconsidering being in our system. When our system produces highly talented, highly able children that go to Howard University, Hampton University, Harvard University, University of Maryland, and every place, in this country. I think we've perceptionally have gotten lost, and sometimes people haven't had a second look. And one of the things I want us to focus on this year is getting our families back into our schools just to see what's there, to make an informed discussion. And that's why I think the work with family engagement is going to be so important, because, I want people to see the reality, not go off of perception, but see the reality of what's here. And if it ain't good enough, I want them to tell me what's not good, because that'll help me drive, improvements.
Why do you think it is so hard to get the kind of family participation that is needed for Prince George's County? And I speak not just as somebody who now observes from the outside, but I'm a product of Prince George's County Schools.
Okay, see?
So
well, congratulations. What school did you go to?
Which one? I mean, from James McHenry to the no longer existent Meadowbrook and Bowie to the former Thomas Johnson Junior High, which is now Thomas Johnson Middle School, to Eleanor Roosevelt.
Okay. Yes.
When it was new. So it just goes to show, again, as I always say, that was in a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. But
now you got wisdom.
One would hope. One would certainly hope. But the complaint that administrators have had about parents not participating is not a new complaint. This is a decades-old issue for Prince George's County. Why do you think that is? What is the plan to change that, to improve that?
Yeah, I think it's a couple things. One, I think the system has to look at its policies and ask itself, do we make it easy for parents to engage? Two, I think we have to do a better job of just defining what we mean when we say engagement. Three, I think, look, families, like my family, I mean, my mother worked 2, sometimes 3 jobs. It didn't mean she didn't care. It didn't mean she wasn't engaged. She had to, put food on our table. And therefore, she, if you reached out to her because there was an issue, she'd respond. But she wasn't checking the website and seeing, what was going on. but she knew to look at my report card, and if things weren't right, she knew to, give me some motivation. However she did it old school, to make sure that I walked in school and knew how to say, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, please, whatever you do, do not call my mom. I'll handle this. And I think we've got to redefine engagement. I think we got to stop making assumptions when parents don't show up that they're not engaged. I think we've got to look at our policies. I think we must, we have to make it easier for parents to be able to help us. And they have to trust us to be able to communicate in a very vulnerable fashion when they have need. And because sometimes we don't know.
Yeah. The 100-day plan that you put out last week is extensive. It is detailed. Even the one that is for public consumption, obviously, I'm sure you have some more detailed notes, in your office. But for the purposes of this conversation, let's talk about the agenda and your top priorities, please.
Yeah. One is, like I said, I call it strategic alignment. I'm just saying, basically, we got to be clear about what's important. Next, we got to make sure we have the best talent in every position. I don't think we do a good job sometimes communicating how wonderful it is to be a part of Prince George's County and the opportunities that we have. I mean, if you're a retiree, for example, I mean, our healthcare program, our benefits package is top notch. You know, I was at Howard. I was just saying to my executive staff today, I was at Howard for 6 years. I thought we had a decent plan until I came here and saw how little I have to spend on healthcare. Now, at 50 years old, that's important to me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so if you can come into the system and have your health care covered while you drive a bus, or while you support security, or while you're a paraeducator, or while you're a teacher in the building, I mean, that's pretty significant. We've got to tell that story to encourage people and also help people understand the opportunity. I mean, no one becomes great, no one becomes successful without a teacher. You know, you know, and there's a calling, I think, upon teachers that just fulfills your spirit. And to get people to recognize all the money in the world won't get you into heaven. You know, at some point, it's about service and giving back, and you know, that opportunity to recognize that there's a greater good beyond yourself. You know, so focusing on that talent development and getting the best and brightest in all positions is important to us. Then look, we've got to focus on academics. That's what we're here for. We've got to make sure kids can read, write, and think critically, and be critical consumers in this world. Because I think we're in this political situation we're in, quite frankly, because of an uneducated population. Because an educated population would be very, you know, just be much more analytical, have much more clarity in the implications of the decisions they make when they vote. And I think you know, that lack of criticality has affected us. So we've got to get the academics right. You know, Maryland, I think children in Maryland are blessed because our state legislature created this law called the Blueprint for Maryland's Future, where they put $3 billion more into education in a number of areas. And we have the opportunity to accelerate if we can implement effectively. And that's something I want us to focus on here in Prince George's County. And then, of course, community engagement and just the basics. I mean, for a long time, we've heard about the challenges with transportation in our district. You know, challenges, you know, with buildings and getting our buildings up to par. You know, making sure that the grass is cut. Some of the basic things. We've just got to lock in on those little details that make a big difference. And so the plan talks about stuff like that too.
You spoke about something that we have analyzed over many years when you were talking about, you know, the basics, which include obviously reading, writing, and of course arithmetic, because what we have seen is that children who do not read become adults who cannot read. Mm-hmm. And so how might you attack that really foundational thing when there are so many impediments now to not only reading for information, but reading even for pleasure, shorter attention spans because of, you know, of social media, not to mention you know, parents who may not be in a position to help their children with those foundational things.
You know, so in this country, in the 60s, we put somebody on the moon. Right here in 2025, we got cars that can drive without us touching anything. I can't believe we can't teach a Black child, a Latino child, a child with special education issues how to read. We can do it if we have the will, if we have the skill. Now, it takes skill and it takes resource. It can be done. I think it should be easier to teach a kid how to read than to do all those other things that we do. I mean, to create Chat GPT. I think the problem we face has to do with one, for a long time we were doing all kinds of crazy things, assuming kids would read. And now I think we're at a place in this country where people are talking about what is the actual science of reading and making sure teachers are properly trained. I have a reading degree from the Johns Hopkins University. And one of the things I remember back in 1999 when I was, working on that master's degree was that a professor saying to me, most kids in America do not read well, not because they're incapable of reading. It's because they've got teachers who just never really learned how to teach them how to read. So we have to make sure as a school system that our teachers are well equipped to teach any child that comes before them how to read. It's something that's within our control, and we've just got to do it. We've got to make sure children come to school so they can learn. I think one of the challenges, we have, not just in Prince George's County, but nationally, is this issue of truancy. If kids aren't here, they can't benefit from the instruction that they get. And that's why one of the things in my plan talks about looking at answering the question, are children who are coming through our schools, are they growing at rates which are acceptable to us? Meaning if you're in school for one full year, you should have an expectation of one full year of growth. Did that happen? Where did it happen? Where did it not happen? Where did it happen at twice the rate? And we've got to be able to study that, have an answer, and put plans in place. I take a very research-oriented approach and a very pragmatic approach in dealing with some of this basic stuff. So the basics are, one, we got to get kids in school. Two, we got to make sure teachers are truly prepared to teach kids how to read. Three, we got to teach the joy and love of reading. Four, we've got to put resources in place because some kids are going to need more time and more opportunities. So we've got we've got a bunch of nonprofits and other entities that work within the system. We've got to make sure when we say reading, we mean the same thing. We got the same assessments to measure if they're getting it or not getting it. We got the same kind of curriculum that supports it. We got the same type of training. There has to be a standardization and then help our parents easily access that and learn that as well.
What would you say about the academic performance gap in the county where some schools are doing better than others?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the enemy of excellence in a school system is variance. Variance between the best teachers and the worst teachers, variance between one school and another school. And I think variance can be controlled for with the processes and practices that you put in place to address it. So I think we have to do a better job of recognizing where the variance is, understanding why that occurs, and putting things in place to decrease it.
Let's talk about teachers a little bit. In the previous administration, the union and some teachers felt that they were not listened to. Some felt that they were not respected. Some felt that they were felt even a sense of bullying, on the job. How can you help improve the relationship between administrators and the rank and file teachers? I mean, suffice it to say, the bottom line is public schools are charged with educating the children. And if that doesn't happen, the school system fails.
I agree. I mean, I think this goes back to partnership. Partnership means that we speak often. We're honest with one another about what's actually happening. When the administration is not doing something right, we own it and we fix it. If teachers aren't doing something right, they own it and they fix it. but we're honest, we're communicative, and we kind of have a spirit of we're coming together to solve this problem and address these issues as it relates to what children need. I think sometimes we don't speak enough, we don't connect enough, we don't have structures to solve problems. And when that happens, you get things spiraling to the point where people are frustrated, and then they give you a reaction that demonstrates they're frustrated, like a no vote of confidence.
So the union president said to me, this was well before your appointment, that the previous superintendent, Millard House, was not meeting with them frequently or regularly. What would you believe is a good sense of regularity and frequently? I mean, give me a number. Once a month, once a week, once every other month?
Yeah. I think at a bare minimum, once a month. But I kind of like meeting with partners weekly. That's what I mean. Partnership means it's not drive by night. Partnership means we've got a structure where we're connected all the time. I can connect with you. You can connect with me. It's easy. It's not hard for me to figure out how to get to you to address an issue. We are in partnership. So we create the sausage together. You don't create the sausage and then give me the sausage and say, tell me how it tastes. We were kind of, our hands were in it together. We were kind of tasting as we went along together, and we got it. There were no surprises. It's a lesson. I spent 6 years training superintendents across the country at Howard University, and one of the things any of my students would tell you that I say in almost every class is the more connection, the less correction. And when what makes the superintendency such a hard doggone job is the reason why, the average tenure of an urban superintendent is 3 years, is because you got a lot of people that want to connect with you. You got a lot of people pulling at you, and you've just got to figure out how to manage that level of need for such a complex thing, because schools are the thing that everybody in the country touch. And so everybody's got an opinion on it. Everybody's got an idea about how it should improve. And you have to have the desire, wherewithal, capacity to just hear it, process it, understand it, and get people organized to come to consensus. Like, this is consensus work. Consensus is hard to do when you it's easy to just go with the majority and say, well, some people just not gonna like me, that's okay. Really working towards consensus, it's slow, it's frustrating, it's difficult, but you got to do it. Like, you got to hang in there. It's just, you jump on that bull and it's gonna buck, and you just try to hold on.
Mm-hmm. So to your point about the average tenure for a public school superintendent is 3 years. Well, Prince George's County is bucking that number right now. You have a 1-year contract. You've been asked, do you want the job permanently? So I'm going to ask you again. I'm going to ask you the same question that you've been asked before. Why not, if you have this bold agenda and these things that need to happen, why not say you want the job permanently, if you believe that you have the secret sauce, or at least the ingredients to the secret sauce?
Well, a couple things I'll say. One, in Prince George's County, I mean, you've had longer tenures than average. I mean, Dr. Kevin Maxwell, who I worked for, who I had a lot of respect for, he did 6 years here. Dr. Monica Golson did 4 years here. And Mr. House did 2, which was shorter than the average. But Prince George's, believe it or not, has had relative stability. And in terms of me, Look, I in 5 years, I've got my stuff where I completed my application for tenure at Howard University. I turned it in, so my tenure application is actually moving through the process right now while I'm on leave. Uh, I think right now what's most important for me to do is to keep the focus and help us refocus on our work here, and I want to bog down in the work. I think uh, I think it's just wise to do the work first. Try to get everybody aligned and locked in on the board. Because if you start thinking about the job right up front, then you might not be as bold as you could be and would be, simply because of the politics. I mean, the politics might have you start making bad decisions. But if you focus on your mission and just do the work, you just do the work. And then, 6 months down the road, you can look up and say, okay, it's time to answer. Are you going to go for it or not? And you can see how you've worked with the county, how you've worked with the board. Um, are you aligned? Are we moving? And then make an informed decision. I mean, I don't know enough to make that informed decision right now, to be honest. I mean, I know this is a great county. I know I was here 9 years ago, and there are amazing people in this district, from staff to students. I know that we can be much better than we are, but we gotta date first. Like, I can't just come in and put a ring on it until I know for sure that it might love me back.
Okay. that was that was an interesting metaphor. I will. I need a few seconds to laugh at that one. Oh my goodness. And the reason I ask is because if you decide after a year that you don't want to stay, or that you are not asked to stay, what does that say about stability? In the county, people have short memories.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I promise is that the people that I bring on my team, and the people who are currently on the team, I will. I pride myself in being a teacher, right? I mean, I was a teacher at Howard University in the doctoral program, and I trained superintendents around the country. In my 6 years at Howard, we have 23 people that have gone through our program and are superintendents around the country. And then there are additional people who were not in my program I supported around the country. And I've been a part of a search firm, the largest search firm in America, and we placed some of America's largest urban superintendents. I mean, most recently, Clark County, which is Las Vegas, Nevada. I placed the superintendent in Atlanta, the superintendent in Birmingham, Alabama, the superintendent in Rochester, New York, the superintendent in Paterson, New Jersey. So if by some chance, I did not stay, I can assure you and the public that I will cultivate and work with somebody who could do the work and stay and be supportive. I mean, that's what good leaders should do. Like, you should always, any good organization thinks about succession planning. And from day one, you're foolish if you don't bring people in and cultivate people and work with people who could, if I just happen to have a health issue or something and were to drop, there should be somebody who's ready to come in internally. And that's what I'm committed to do. And I think my staff will tell you, Shawn teaches every minute of the day. He's intentional and kind of lays out his thinking out loud for us to be able to pick up, understand, learn. And he gives us ample opportunity to be ready.
So let me ask you about that. I was just kind of looking at where you were at Howard, the Urban Superintendent Academy, Assistant Professor of Educational Leadership and Policy Studies. Boy, those names are as long as curriculum vitae. That notwithstanding, one of the other complaints that we heard from the union was about administrators, vice principals. And correct me if I'm wrong, but your position with the Urban Superintendent Academy, I'm sure there is a skill set that you were teaching there that would be applicable to principals and vice principals, yes?
Absolutely. I remember
Yeah.
I was the Maryland State Principal of the Year in 2009. So
Yeah.
I believed in the principalship. And I mean, I think it's one of the most important jobs. I mean, research shows next to the teacher, the principal is most significant in student achievement because good teachers do not work for bad principals. They just won't do it.
So what do you believe is one of the most important qualities for principals?
Well, a couple. One, emotional intelligence. I think two, I think they need to know how to hire the right people, how to support them, and how to build capacity. And I think they must be solid communicators, effective managers, and be clear about expectations for students and staff. So there was research that came out in the late 60s that talked about correlates of effective schools, and they talked about the fact that you had to have a safe environment. The principal had to be clear on instructional leadership and the instructional focus. You had to have parent involvement, a climate of high expectations, know how to use time, and be clear about what you're monitoring. Like schools that do that get results. Schools that don't do not. So we have to make sure our principals understand kind of those 7 areas and do it well. And I think if we do that, we see improvement.
There's so many other questions that I have for you, Dr. Joseph. Unfortunately, we are out of time.
Let's do it again soon.
Absolutely. Looking forward to talking to you and watching how things go. This is only the second day, but as they say, once you're in it, you're in it. So good luck. Good luck to you, sir, and we will be in touch.
Thank you so much, and I look forward to coming back and continuing the dialogue.
Sure thing. That is the Daily Drum for this Wednesday, July 2nd. I'm Harold Fisher. Good night.